Welcome to Metro Talk. I'm Kent Shuffle. Thanks for being here. Jim Schrader's alongside. Jim's the publisher of the Telegraph. Welcome, Jim.
Hi, Kent.
And Pat Gowan, one of the editors with the Post-Dispatch, is here as well. Welcome, Pat.
I can't.
Pat, Illinois House members have voted to cut their pay. However, there are questions about whether the plan they're following is constitutional, or are we ultimately going to see lawmakers take a pay cut?
Well, it's not constitutional. The people who make the laws of the state of Illinois never actually read the Constitution of the state of Illinois, on which all the laws must be based. We've seen this before, and now we're seeing it with pay. The Constitution plainly says you cannot change the pay of the members of the General Assembly during the term to which they're elected. So they can vote to cut it by 10%, which they've done. I have no idea if it'll get through the Senate, but my money would say not. They can vote to cut the pay 10%, but that will have to be for the people elected in the next election, not the people whose terms began in 2011, because they're already serving. So if they're cutting their own pay, they're cutting their own pay provided they win back the seat in the next election. The Constitution simply does not provide for this. It strikes me that either the sponsor doesn't understand the role of a lawmaker in abiding by the Constitution, which seems absurd, or they're trying to pull a fast one over onto voters and say, well, look, we've cut our own pay, but the Senate wouldn't go along with it. Well, even if the Senate went along with it, there would be a constitutional block. Illinois has part-time legislators, and these guys are barely getting by. The pay range right now, depending upon your committee assignment, is about $68,000 to $95,000 for part-time work. Now, you can't expect somebody to support himself on $68,000 to $95,000 on part-time work, so we give them $139 a day, I believe, for living expenses while the General Assembly's in session. So for 4 months, you're getting like $139 a day on top of the $68,000 to $95,000. Now, that would be
And allowance to run your office.
Oh, well,
to
absolutely.
hire help.
Those expenses too. Now it would be like $62,000 to $85,000 roughly if it were cut 10%, but I wouldn't hold my breath about that. It's about $1.2 million saved if they do that. I think the greater question for a lot of taxpayers is not whether they're being paid enough or too much. It's whether they're doing anything for the pay that they're getting, because we are in trouble on so many fronts, most of them economic, due to a lack of leadership, a lack of willingness to make hard decisions during election years, and if you're in the House, every other year is an election year. I think that's the more pressing question. As readers of my column and viewers of this program know that I've pointed out before, New Hampshire makes its laws by paying its legislators $200. That's not per year, that's per session. It's $100 a year, no expenses. It is a smaller state, and New Hampshire rates better than Illinois by almost any measure, which comes back to the question of if we need to pay these people this much, why aren't we better off? And if New Hampshire's better off, why are we paying these people at all?
So you're willing to cut that part-time salary even further then?
Well, it's either part-time work or it's not. Some of them work full-time, some of them work at it part-time. It seems like an awful lot of money. How many of their constituents are paid within that range I'm talking about, $68,000 to $95,000? It seems like it. And how many part-time workers who are their constituents are paid that kind of money? They're one of the highest paid legislatures in the country. New Hampshire notwithstanding, most are nowhere near Illinois. And I think Illinois actually has higher pay than some states which consider their legislators to be full-time. It just seems like the whole thing is ripe for a look-see, not a quick fix. 10%, I think I'm cutting my pay today, but I can't constitutionally. But I mean a really holistic look about whether we're paying these people too much.
And you're saying work 4 months out of the year, so if it was an $80,000 average, it's $20,000 a month for that part-time work.
A lot of money. I also wonder if we ought not maybe attach performance goals to the pay. I know we really can't, but wouldn't you love to say it, okay, a balanced budget by the 1st of April, your pay's cut 10%, a balanced budget by the 1st of May, or it's cut another 10%, might see some action.
Jim, the House has passed a measure that would cut the salaries for lawmakers, but there are constitutional issues as to whether or not that can be done. Will we see lawmakers take a pay cut?
No. That's PR, that was flim-flam, that was snake oil. This was on the heels of passing a 66% increase in your income tax and a 76% increase in the corporate income tax, but we feel your pain and we're willing to cut our pay by 10%, though it will never fly in the Senate, and it will certainly never fly before a judge, because they're going to strike it down as being unconstitutional. But it sure makes great PR to stand up there and say, you know, I did my best. You know, when you come home from your part-time job for 8 months of vacation, you get to come home and say, I did my best. I tried to cut my pay, but you know, those lousy SOBs in the Senate are those idiot judges that don't know what's going on, wouldn't allow me to. The unemployment rate, or excuse me, the minimum wage in the state of Illinois is $8.25 per hour. That's usually starting wage for people that have very little experience or are just learning their jobs, and as they get better at their jobs, then they get bonuses. I like Pat's idea of the pay for performance. Part-time job, 4 months a year, $8.25 an hour. If you can get things done, and as you learn more skills, then you get a raise. You were talking about the Constitution saying you can't cut the pay. I'm not sure that the Constitution calls for bonuses for serving committee assignments. I think that's something that's added on after the fact.
Paid for is provided by law. It
Yeah,
doesn't
exactly.
call for any amount. It just says you're paid by law, but you can't cut it.
I will point out that New Hampshire has the largest legislature of any state. But as Pat pointed out, those guys are paid $100 per session. So they have the largest legislature in terms of sheer numbers, but their entire legislature put together is about what 2 congressmen make in the state of Illinois. And it's about 400, I think, legislators in
I think it's
New
about
Hampshire.
400.
So, you know, $100 a pop, that's, what's that, $400,000?
And no expenses.
And no expenses. So, okay, we'll say 3 congressmen in the state of Illinois earn, by the time you pay their per diems and their expenses, what the entire New Hampshire legislature pays. New Hampshire is certainly not without its problems, but they do not overpay their elected officials.
They might have a lawsuit because they may very well not be meeting the minimum wage at $100 per session.
But they don't have to. It's a part-time job. You know what the pay is before going in. It is constitutional. They know it's always been basically a volunteer legislature.
Remember, school boards aren't paid anything. That would really violate that one.
That's right.
There you go. We need to take a quick break. We'll have more in a moment.
Hi, I'm Audrey Lucchese, and I'm from Alton, Illinois. I love music, and that's why I came to Lewis & Clark. It's been an amazing experience here at Lewis & Clark, working with students that are so talented, coming from all over the area, and they work so hard to follow their dreams. The music faculty at Lewis & Clark they're fantastic, and they're there every step of the way to push you to follow your dreams. One of the unique opportunities that I have had at Lewis & Clark is being able to record my own music with a fellow student here. Being able to record our music has opened doors for us in the music industry. My long-term goal is to finish here at Lewis & Clark and then to transfer to a 4-year school and finish my degree in music performance. I would recommend Lewis & Clark to another student because it is definitely a great place to get started and it can open so many doors for you.
Big dreams and good grades aren't enough to get into college. There are actual steps you need to take. Finding someone who can help is the first and most important. For the next steps, go to knowhowtogo.org.
You're watching Metro Talk. I'm Kent Scheffel, Pat Gowan, and Jim Schrader here. Jim, the Illinois Senate Redistricting Committee has met, and some of the individuals who spoke at that meeting said, we need a smaller Senate. We'd like to have fewer lawmakers. Any chance of that happening?
Why don't we keep the number we got and pay them like they do in New Hampshire? We'll just pay them $100 a year.
He's fixated.
I like that idea. Senate districts are pretty spread out in the state of Illinois. Geographically, they got some big territories. I mean, the representatives have some giant geography to cover as well. Senators do too. In the more populous counties up north, it's not particularly too horrible for a senator to come up to the population that he needs for his district. Down south, those we use the term meandering districts, I think they are. And with redistricting, they're trying to keep all counties are trying to keep the whole county in one Senate district or one representative district. Again, it sounds like a wonderful idea. That one's a little harder to pull off. I don't have a problem with the size of the districts, and I don't particularly have a problem with the number of senators that we have. I've got a problem with the performance and what they're doing while they're in Springfield. Report came out this morning that the state's backlog in unpaid bills that date back to October of 10, so we're now 6 months, is $4.5 billion. Now that was a $19 million improvement from October of 09. So we paid down our backlog of past due bills by $19 million, but we owe $4.5 billion in unpaid bills. And the clock is ticking every day, just adding back to that. That's just the backlog. I don't have a problem with the number of senators. I got a problem with what they're accomplishing. We've got all kinds of money, it appears, to do things that we want to do and get special things built and get special allocations, but we can't pay our past due bills.
Pat, the Illinois Senate Redistricting Committee has met, and some individuals who spoke at that meeting said we need fewer senators. Are we going to see that happen?
Well, first, I just want to point out that I'd hate to point out what a percentage of $4 billion 19 million is, but it's minor progress at the best. I think what some of these people were saying, from what I read, was not necessarily that they wanted fewer senators overall, although I'm sure for some that's true, is they wanted fewer senators in their town. That part of the problem was the communities that were being split into 2 Senate districts or even 3 Senate districts, perhaps a town more likely a county that had pieces in each, are saying, we don't have any clout. If I've got 3 different senators representing my county, that means that most of each of their interests lay elsewhere, and that nobody really holds me as his own, because Jim's got part of it, and Kent's got part of it, and Pat's got part of it, and who really cares? And that they feel like they'd be better off if they had one senator who covered their whole territory, for whom it was a more important bite than to be split multiple ways. And I think it's a plea to the map makers to try to see that they're not split in those ways. Of course, the ultimate determining factor is protecting the seats of the majority. And in this case, I read the other day, I didn't actually work this out, but I guess it's right, that this is the first time since the Constitution of 1970 that a redistricting has occurred when both chambers of the legislature and the governor are held by somebody in the same party, making it just a slam dunk for the Democrats.
Jim, we've got a problem with College, Illinois, a suburban
Yes,
Chicago,
we do.
suburban Chicago lawmaker says we need to bail out the prepaid tuition program. Meanwhile, the Illinois Auditor General says we've got other issues here. William Holland says almost $13 million was invested by the fund in Shore Bank in California. And that was in spite of various red flags that said, don't invest. The money was put in 2010. The bank went out of business. Bottom line is, should Illinois be bailing out the College Illinois program? And should the Illinois Student Assistance Commission, which monitors it, did they make a mistake in investing that money?
Well, it's obvious they made a mistake in investing the money. They lost it. One would think when you're talking about a program, College Illinois, that would allow you to pay in on a monthly or an annual basis basically lock the tuition rate in for little Susie Q, your toddler, that money would be there when Susie Q is ready to go to college. You've invested 18 years worth, and the state of Illinois, after all, had your money, right? No, not exactly. Even if you hear radio commercials, for example, for College Illinois, they say that it is not guaranteed, there is some risk. Basically it was like, or buying an insurance policy, but there was some float there that they were trying to grow the program by investing in real estate or investing in certain banks, and they have lost actual value, and people that were counting on that amount to grow to cover that tuition don't see the funds. So now what? Does the state of Illinois, which doesn't control it, and the taxpayers now have to bail it out and make good for the losses that the fund has made? I don't know that that's going to happen. I don't know that the taxpayers want it. It sounds like a good thing for the state to guarantee it if you've been investing in it, but if I haven't, that's your problem. The prospectus says you might lose value here. This was kind of like buying stock. I don't know that the state has the money or the will to bail it out, but by the same token, in this state, what's another 13, 14, 15, 18 million dollars when you owe $4.5 billion in unpaid bills? I don't know what's going to happen, but it certainly appears to me that the fund has been mismanaged.
Pat, should the state bail out the College Illinois program, and was there a failure to manage the funds properly?
This is a movie script that would be called National Lampoon's College Fund. Just take the $12 million at issue. I don't know all the details about how this happened, but they decide they're going to invest $12 million in Shore Bank in Chicago. Then they hire a California operation to advise them to make the investment after they've made the investment, for which they paid $250,000 for the advice to do what somehow they'd managed already to have done. Never mind that the California company, the founder of it's twice been tried on federal charges of bribery and acquitted in Florida, and has been run afoul of ethics violations in California, but they don't seem to have realized this. They're $338 behind. They've got a deficit for the whole fund. And it's true. The best part of all of it is it's true that the state does not back the shortfall. But the law that set it up requires that if there's a shortfall, the legislature has to consider bailing it out. They don't have to bail it out. They just have to consider bailing it out. I don't even know how you comply with a law that says that. So it'd be a great movie script, but I'm sure glad I don't have money in it.
We need to take a break. We'll have more in a moment.
Hello and welcome to the Lewis and Clark Minute. Today we're going to check out the radio broadcasting program and WLCA with Mike Lemons.
Have you ever listened to your favorite radio station or your favorite disc jockey and say, I could do that? Or maybe you're the type of person who says, I could never do something like that. Well, with the help of first-year mass comm student John, we're going to show you just how easy it is. Each voice intro starts with talking about the band that just played, and we add a station identifier. Next, you want to offer some information that may be of interest to your audience. And finally, tell the listeners what the next song is, who sings it, followed by another station identifier. John will do one live now.
Silver Sun Pickup substitution on WLCA. The Big Pink released their debut album called A Brief History of Love. This single is off that album. It's The Big Pink with Dominoes. It's on College Radio's Best 89.9.
This has been your Lewis and Clark Minute.
What's that? I don't know. Something I kind of made. Ooh, what's it do?
What do I do? Well, thanks for asking. I ring my bell and I like to dance. What do I do? Well, thanks for asking.
Ow! Yeah, it still needs a little work.
Anything's possible. Keep thinking. Get started on your own inventions or just play some games at inventnow.org.
Sounds like you could use some Van Gogurt. It's fortified with arch-rich nutrients to improve your math and reading skills. Catch!
Van Gogurt, thanks. So what's the deal with your ear?
Always with the ear, huh?
Feed your kids the arts. For 10 simple ways to learn how, visit AmericansForTheArts.org.
This is Metro Talk. I'm Kent Scheffel. Pat Gowan and Jim Schrader are alongside. Pat, Representative John Bradley of Marion has been pushing for workers' comp reform in Illinois. He's now saying, wait a minute, I give up. We're going to start over. What I was trying to do isn't working, so we're going to come up with a new plan. Are lawmakers ready to revise the workers' comp system in Illinois?
Well, if they were to do what he recommends, which is to dismantle the entire workers' comp system and put it all in the lap of the courts, he's got to be crazy. It'll be far more expensive. It'll clog the courts. Lord knows where it will go in terms of the awards. There may be something wrong with it. On the other hand, if what he's really doing, as I suspect, is to really try to get people's attention for a debate on reforming something that is pretty badly broken, then he's a genius. And he may actually get something done by reminding all the stakeholders of what the possibilities would be. Because even the people who hate the workers' compensation program the way it is, the big employers, the Chamber of Commerce types, even they don't want the system to go away and be put in the courts. They just want more regulation on it. And the big boondoggle Illinois, I guess, is what they call causation. An assumption that if you're injured at work, it's the workplace's fault automatically, and that workers' comp is thus assessed that way. And that the belief is we need a law that would put more obligation on you to prove how the work related to the injury before you could collect from that system. Our brothers at the Belleville News Democrat have been doing a remarkable job of showing abuses both in the way the system is run, I think, and in the way it's been abused by some people in the Department of Corrections, ostensibly, which I think has added fuel to this fire, particularly since this guy is a Democrat from Marion down our way. He's probably reading some of this coverage. So this may really get the debate going about how we can improve that, which would improve the business climate of Illinois, supposedly. And I don't want to see workers walked on, but I don't want to see them taking unfair advantage either.
Jim, you have to sign the checks at the Telegraph and make those workers' comp payments when they come up. Are lawmakers ready to revise the workers' comp system in Illinois?
Well, the state of Illinois has some of the highest workers' comp rates in the nation. Freedom Communications, our parent company, owns papers in California, North Carolina, Florida, Texas. I think Illinois is second only to California in our workers' comp rates. As Pat pointed out, the series done by the News Democrat pointed out that some of the worst abusers, it appears, are state workers, which their workers' comp claims are investigated by state workers. Isn't that interesting that you have an AFSCME brother or sister investigating your case? What are the chances of them ruling against you? While the Post-Dispatch and our company and most private employers use independent workers' comp negotiators or arbiters to try to work these things out to do what is best for the employee, but also what is best for the employer. It's not just a rubber stamp, yeah, you can take off. Workers' comp, private workers' comp negotiators or arbiters also are a little bitter about making you prove that you were actually hurt on the job. You know, you weren't water skiing over the weekend and tore your rotator cuff, and then you got to work on Monday and you couldn't type. I think I tore my rotator cuff here typing. Again, I don't think that it's really going to accomplish anything. Maybe the state workers' comp people ought to be pulled out of these actuarial tables and have, I don't want to use different class of citizen, but possibly a different class of claimants. But I don't really think short term that there's going to be anything done. While everybody claims that workers' comp is a real problem and will give lip service to it at the state or when they're talking to a Chamber of Commerce group, I'm not sure any of those elected officials are really ready to take on the problem.
Perhaps it could be put in the hands of the people who run the Illinois College prepaid tuition program.
they did such a good job with that, that's probably a great idea. And they probably have time on their hands now, too.
Could be.
Pat, parent groups in the St. Louis area are backing away from sponsoring Boy Scout troops now. They're citing liability issues. They're also citing the fact that the Boy Scouts are opposed to gay membership. The bottom line, are we going to see less participation, or are we going to see fewer Boy Scout troops in the region as a result of parent groups getting nervous about sponsoring them?
I think what we've seen probably are alternative sponsors for the ones that are pulling out, and I don't think the Boy Scouts per se are under attack, but there's a reminder to some sponsoring organizations that it is a religious affiliated in a general sort of way operation with a certain belief or agenda structure as it regards gays, for example, that's part of it, and that it's been fairly ripe as a liability issue because unfortunately a certain number of people have been attracted to Boy Scout leadership positions for improper purposes. Interestingly, after this was reported within the last few days, then we had another case pop up of a guy in Collinsville who was associated with the Boy Scout troop in Belleville who's accused of molesting children. Now, not as far as I know molesting Boy Scouts in the allegations, but there is that liability issue, so I think it's incumbent on PTAs and PTOs to remind their member organizations to sort of be aware of what you're doing when you provide sponsorship, that there is a potential downside.
Jim, are we going to see fewer Scout troops as a result of parent groups being concerned about the liability issues, about gay member issues?
I'm not so sure the parent groups are going to be the ones that are the problem. I think Pat pointed out the overall sponsors. Some companies, the United Ways, the different nonprofit organizations that have offered types of funding to Boy Scouts before, many of which are now feeling additional pressure to become politically correct or to maintain a policy of being politically correct. So the statement by the Boy Scouts that basically they don't welcome gay Scout leaders, and that's basically what it comes down to, causes some of those organizations to get a little jittery. I don't know that the parents and teachers are as concerned. I think a bigger problem with organizations like Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, the interactivity, the need to get outdoors, the exercise, the camaraderie, the going camping, the places, the things like that most of us needed outlets for when we were children have now been taken over by the internet and video games and all types of other things. I would think that shows a bigger risk to overall scouting than the threat of liability and the problem with a stance on gays.
That's going to do it for this edition of Metro Talk. Thanks for being with us. Pat Gowan, one of the editors with the Post-Dispatch, has been here, along with Jim Schrader, the publisher of the Telegraph. I'm Kent Scheffel. We'll see you next week.